Thank you, Mr. Habib. Please join.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, Mr. Mothar Hossain, for your kind invitation to join with this webinar. And good morning and welcome to all to this session. Good evening and welcome to all to this session. Actually, I think and I believe that you will enjoy this session very much because we have some speakers, subject matter expert like Mr. Leon Garas. Actually, he is heading the bank's relationship, correspondent bank relationship of BCG, Banco Cantonal Geneva, Switzerland. And in addition to Mr. Graz, there are another guest speaker from Central Bank from BFIU, Mr. Khalil Anam. Mr. Anam is a subject matter expert for AML due diligence, and he is very much active in with the FATF and APG, and he is a regular speaker on different subject matter, especially regulatory actions and plan in the US and Australia, Thailand, Singapore, and Hong Kong. And we have another speaker from Chittagong, from Dhaka Bank, Mr. Mohammad Rafiqul Islam. He is one of the great trainer in our country. So I think today you will enjoy a very good session. I hope so. So nowadays, correspondent banking relationship and de-risking in correspondent banking are must talk issue nowadays, especially in the banking industry in the globe. So again, I'd like to express my hearty thanks to my organizers to arrange such kind of event. So, you know, at the very outset, I would like to focus on what is the correspondent banking relationship. As I am the first speaker, so I have to create some flows for the entire session. So I'd like to speak, what is the correspondent banking relationship? And what do you mean by correspondent banking relationship? You know, a bank will establish, it is not justified. It is not justified that a bank will establish its branches, its offices, its subsidiaries in every location, in every city of this world. But it is justified that a bank will have the business in different locations of the world. So in order to conduct that business relation, that business, so bank should maintain the relationship with other banks in the world. So the relationship that maintains a bank with another bank is called correspondent banking. And who is the provider of the services? We are called correspondent bank, and who is the receiver of these services? We call respondent bank. And you know, correspondent banking relationship network is essential for the global payment system, especially cross-border transactions. And there are multiple products and services that we can get from correspondent banking network relationship. That is, you know, the trade service, that means trade service including advising letter of credits, discounting and negotiating letter of credits, and then clearing services like nostro account services, trade loans, and guarantee services, even cash management. There are multiple services we are getting from correspondent banking. And you know, there are lots of issues related to the correspondent banking services. The three types of correspondent banking relationships we call. First, relationship management application, RMA, and then nostro accounts, and then other special arrangement. Actually, the banks in Bangladesh or in this like these countries, mostly we are working as respondent bank. And the banks located in US, in European country, in UK, they are mostly provided the correspondent banking services because they are the first currency like USD, GBP, Euro, JPY. So they are provider of this currency. So they are working as a correspondent bank. And who is the correspondent bank, who is the best correspondent bank as per our as per our consideration. Those who have the local presence, competitive pricing are providing innovative digital solutions, access to lending, credit facilities, stage for processing payments, collections, multi-currency capabilities, liquidity management, industry knowledge, understanding the respondent business, speed, quality of responses to queries, overall performance of dedicated client relationship manager, cross-border capabilities, onboarding process, post-sales support, treasury management systems. These are the considering area why we are considering our bank as the best correspondent bank in our country. And ladies and gentlemen, now we can draw our, we can focus on the issue, the major issue. What is the risk associated with the correspondent banking network? You know, correspondent banking by default is a high risk product, high risk business. So there are lots of consideration, reasons why it is vulnerable, why it is risky. So we can tell some reasons like, say, if it is correspondent bank, they have no direct knowledge. We call they have no any direct knowledge on the respondent bank's customer. Okay, so say CDNA is the bank in New York, is providing the correspondent bank services to the banks in Bangladesh. They have the knowledge on the Bangladeshi respondent bank, but they don't have knowledge on the respondent bank customer like ABC, like so they have knowledge on the direct knowledge. So this is one of the risks. And secondly, huge volumes. Correspondent bank have to provide, have to undertake, have to clear huge volumes of transactions. That is why it is next to impossible to control, to impose the control on every transaction, every single transaction. So this is another risk. And thirdly, the third-party access to the correspondent accounts that maintained by the respondent bank. It's very critical and very sensitive. We call, if it is bank, we call nested correspondent or downstream correspondent services. If it is a customer, that we call payable for accounts. So it's very risky for the correspondent banking services because they don't have any direct access and knowledge on due diligence on the nested banks or payable third party, PTA parties. And later on, another risk is the country where the respondent bank is domiciled, they don't have, maybe there are some deficiency or lack in AML regulations, AML setup and infrastructure in that country. And similarly, the bank to whom the correspondent services is provided by the correspondent bank, even they don't have any required adequate AML safety compliance standards setup or infrastructure. So these are the basic risks for the correspondent banking relationship. And now we can move forward for the very sensitive issue, that is sanction risk for correspondent banking network. You know, recently a report has been published by Fenerjo, it's a research company based in Europe. So they published a report that from 2008 and 2018, 10 years, US regulator has imposed fines on different banks, but it is found that 63% fine was imposed only to breach sanctions, and rest 37% imposition of fines are for different reasons like AML violations or BSA violations or transfer violations. But major fines are imposed on the banks only to breach the sanctions. And most of the sanction breaching actually are occurred through correspondent banking relationship. So it's a major risk for the correspondent bank that the breach of sanction compliance is the basic risk. And how banks can get rid of from this risk, manage this risk? Actually, every bank should have their own sanction compliance infrastructure solutions. So there are, of course, there should be a very clear policy guideline and SOP, standard operating procedure for sanction compliance. in accordance with this policy and SOP, you should arrange a global standard sanctions screening solutions, and there should be a monitoring process and reporting criteria to the regulators. So every bank should have a very robust and complete and comprehensive sanctions screening solutions program. And now we can focus on the issue of actually why the AML due diligence is required for the correspondent bank relationship. You know, in earlier days, it was not much required for the huge AML due diligence for the correspondent relationship. In the year of 1999, there are incident. It was early incident for abusing correspondent bank for money laundering. It was a bank in Russia. They have an account. They were maintaining an account with the bank in US. It's a bank of New York, Bonnie. So at the time, the Russian bank has conducted several transactions that was laundered proceed, illicit proceed, and through Bank of New York, they processed that transactions, that illicit transactions to the US financial channel. After that, a report has been published by the US Senate Permanent Subcommittee, PSI, and where it was found that some foreign banks are facilitating the laundered fund through their global correspondent banking channel. And after that, the banks are introduced lots of AML due diligence process and policy for the correspondent banks, like global correspondent banks. So this is the background for why the correspondent banks are taking much initiative for conducting due diligence for their relationship. And later on, we can move for the another area, that AML due diligence in correspondent bank. I am going to finish my first round talk with this slide. That is AML due diligence. How do you conduct AML due diligence in correspondent banking relationship? It's the major part of my discussion as per your question. So first of all, KYC process. You have to conduct the KYC process on the correspondent banking relationship. And first and foremost job for the KYC process is collection of documents. It's a very required thing, collection of documents. But collection of documents is very critical, and I think it's a very time-worthy and very costly. So banks in the world, they are preferring the single depository from where they can collect the all record documents. Though there are no set of documents, there are no guidance what documents are required. But depends on the banks, depends on the regulations, depends on the jurisdictions. Banks, correspondent banks are taking documents, collecting documents case by case. So nowadays there are lots of KYC utilities, vendor service like KYC.com, and SwiftRegistry.com, and Bankers Almanac, Equity, Thomson Reuters, DTCC. So there are lots of KYC vendor services. So banks are collecting the documents from them. And second stage is the verification of documents. Upon collecting the documents, they have to verify their documents, whether it is genuine or not. So what can we do? Banks actually verify the document from the central bank or from embassy located in the correspondent bank, or from the respective regulators or issuers. Even bank can communicate with the respondent banks directly to establish the genuineness of the documents. And later on, there are another issue is the management approval, because upon confirming the document, you have to get the management approval, and you'll conduct ongoing screening and transaction monitoring, reporting of suspicious activities, and record keeping. This is the this is the AML due diligence process for correspondent banking relationship. In addition to this due diligence, KYC due diligence, you have to conduct enhanced due diligence for the scenario, if it is PEP involvement, if it is downstream or nested correspondent services. So you have to conduct enhanced due diligence for the correspondent banking relationship. Now I am the very end of this of my question answer. That is, what is nested and what is payable through account? Because we are receiving lots of queries, questions from different banks and our colleagues. Actually, what is the nested correspondent service and what is payable to the accounts? It's nothing. Nested means when a respondent bank are allowing another bank to get access his nostro account with correspondent bank, that is nested or transition correspondent bank. And what is payable to the account? If respondent bank is allowed to its customer to operate his nostro account with correspondent bank directly, that is called payable to accounts. And this is risky because respondent bank is not knowing the real life scenario where the account is operating by the PTA customer. So, and this is the major risk for the PTA arrangement. So I think from my side, from the first round, this is the okay, and I think it will be the good session.
In regard of correspondent banking and what are the effects of de-risking correspondent banking relationships. Mr. Habib, please join and discuss.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, again for a very nice question. So de-risking is a very important issue nowadays for the correspondent banking industry across the globe. So we know what is de-risking. Actually, pressure on the global banks to comply with very strict AML safety compliance has caused certain institutions to consider to exit some other banks as the tools of risk mitigation is called de-risking. Actually, when the regulators, especially in US, in UK, has imposed very strict regulation AML safety compliance program for the correspondent banks, the global correspondent bank like JP Morgan, CTNA, SCB, Bank of America, Bank of New York, BNP Paribas. So at the time, actually, the global correspondent bank service provider banks are thinking they're getting a program like de-risking program. Under this program, they terminate their correspondent banking relationship in full or in part to the respondent banks, especially the respondent banks located in third world country, located in the country where the AML safety regulation is weak, where the AML compliance structure is not adequate, not up to date, up to the mark. So they terminated lots of correspondent bank relationship to the respondent bank with the respondent banks. And you know, it is a very challenging issues for the respondent banks actually, because it affects widely the functioning of local banking system, create financial exclusion and drive some payments flows underground. And the banks having the respondent bank, actually they are facing lots of problem to conduct their international trade business, to clear their settlements and to provide their required and desired services to their customers, especially trade customers. Still, they are facing lots of problem with this de-risking program. And you know why? What is the basic reason? What is the background landscape to introduce such program, such de-risking program? You know, in 9/11, you know, 9/11 incident that took place in US. After the 9/11 incident, there are a report published by the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, the United States of America. In this report, we found that 29 hijackers, they opened 24 accounts in 4 banks in US, and all the funds were coming from 3 different countries, and they are using correspondent banking networks to transfer, to shift their funds to the US. So after that, actually the regulator in US and other in UK, they introduced very tough AML safety compliance program for the global correspondent banking service provider, for the foreign banks, for the global banks. After that, actually, bank has introduced huge risk assessment program, and after the upon the risk assessment program, they took the decision to terminate, to close the relationship with the banks, as I mentioned earlier. And besides this, there are other reasons for de-risking. Impact of internationally agreed regulatory reforms, imposition of enforcement actions, and changes of legal, regulatory, or supervisory requirements in respondent banks' jurisdictions, and imposition of international sanctions or jurisdictions or respondent, strategic AML safety deficiencies in respondent banks countries, and liability, or we can say the cost to undertake the CDD, the due diligence for the respondent banks. And another important reason for de-risking is sovereign credit risk rating. So with this risk factor, actually, the banks are deciding not to continue the relationship with the respondent banks, and they terminated some relationship with the respondent banks, and we call this de-risking. And the correspondent banks, respondent banks are major affected areas for the de-risking program. And another avenue is the MSB, money service business, exchange houses, money and value transfer services. They are most affected for the de-risking program. And I think that there are a survey report published by World Bank and IMF jointly, and the report shows that 60% of total MSB industry across the world are affected by de-risking program. And a portion of the total population in the world, actually, they rely on remittances to pay their foods, to pay their housing costs, healthcare, and school fees. De-risking is having a direct impact over the country's population, and more especially over the vulnerable community. It has a great negative impact to drive remittance flows underground or hawala. And upon evolving de-risking, actually, money service business industry, exchange houses are being affected very extremely. And the global financial service providers, banks, and FI have restricted the transfer of remittance fund through their account, through their Nostra account to respondent banks. And with this platform, actually, with this situation, the World Bank, IMF, and Financial Service Board, FSB, and Correspondent Banking Coordination Group. So even FATF, Financial Action Task Force, the mother body for AML safety, policy setting body in the world. So jointly they took initiative, and they proposed that every bank should take the decision on the basis of case by case, not wholesale basis, because in our country, in the world, so the correspondent banks are taking the decision on wholesale basis. Say Africa is vulnerable, so all the banks located, stationed in Africa is terminated. So no, so FATF and other policy setting bodies, they are suggested, no, you have to go to the case by cases, not wholesale basis. And they also propose some solutions to the respondent banks, that every respondent banks, they are affected by the de-risking program. They have to develop, they have to redesign their AML compliance program, and they need to they require to implement sufficient elements like sanction screening program, like transaction monitoring solution, like record keeping, and advanced trading. So this proposed to the respondent banks, they're affected for the de-risking, to introduce as a global standard AML compliance program within that bank and within that country, so that global correspondent bank service provider bank can able to provide, to reinstate, to regain the relationship again with the respondent bank, so then they can work under the banking umbrella. Because one of the major risks for de-risking is some payments and some business are going underground, because they don't have any access to the global financial system. How they will move their funds? Of course, alternatively, they will choose the underground like Hawala and other underground channel to facilitate that transaction. So now it's a very critical discussion. It is a very important discussion for the banks globally. I think Mr. Mothar, you have some time constraints, so I will not carry much, but I will take the floor later on. Take the floor later on for to discuss another issue. So thank you very much. And lastly, I'd like to thank Mr. Khalil Anam for he was working for last 2.5 hours for TBML guideline, and I don't know whether his bank is no or not, because he is provided huge time and resources for this guideline. And accordingly, I will also like to thank Mr. Gras for his very in detail discussion and on ground discussion and very practical discussion for red flag issues. Thank you very much.
And banking relationship, please.
Thank you, Mr. Tanvir. It's a very, very brilliant question from the audience. And I think your audience is very brilliant. So, but actually, this question is required much time to answer, because I know you have very time constantly. I think you already exceeded your time limit. So anyway, so I am giving you the answer in a short. So actually, Wolfsburg Group is a organization for 13 private banks. Those were the global banking service providers like JP Morgan, CTNA, SCB, HSBC, JP Morgan. So like these banks. So this is the private organization for 30 global banks. But their standard, their policy and principles so high, understand. That is why all the banks in the world, they are complying their regulation, their principles and policies as well. So Uzbek questionnaire also same. In the year of 2002, they introduced first the questionnaire, correspondent banking questionnaire. And it's a very required to assess the correspondent banking risk exposure. To assess the risk of the respondent banks or correspondent banks, banks should use this questionnaire. Earlier, it was only 2 pages questionnaire, but in response of the regulatory expectations and also call from different authorities like FATF, like APG and correspondent banking coordination group and FSB. Actually, now Uzbek Group has modified their questionnaire and published in 2018 the new questionnaire we call CBDDQ, correspondent banking due diligence questionnaire. It's a very extensive, very comprehensive questionnaire. There are 13 subsections and 114 questions. And it was observation from different banks that this questionnaire is very tough to fill in. And in the world, there are many sessions, one-day sessions, how to fill in the questionnaire. So, but I think nowadays all the banks in the world, maximum of the banks, they are using the questionnaire, Uzbek questionnaire, because one-to-one. Earlier it was the one-to-one questionnaire. Say Islamic Bank and your Dhaka Bank. So we have our own questionnaire. Dhaka Bank have their own questionnaire, and BCG they have own questionnaire. So every bank has to fill in and sign the counterpart questionnaire. So now it is comprehensive and now it's unique. So all banks are using the same questionnaire and publish this questionnaire their website so that other banks can take this questionnaire from the website and can do the risk assessment. So actually, it's the one of the tools to assess the risk of the counterpart correspondent banking partner. So in a very nutshell, this is from my side, and as I am the last speaker, as I open the door, and now I am going to close the door. So I'd like to thank to all the speakers, especially my friend Mr. Gras from Switzerland, and my dear sir and Mr. Khalil Anam, and my brother Mr. Rafiqul Islam, and especially to my 3 moderator and co-moderators. Actually, you are working hard for this event, and you already arranged another event earlier for financial crime conference, during COVID-19 situation pandemic. So we please accept our sincere thanks to all of the moderators and co-moderators, and the same topics, the correspondent banking relationship and due diligence. There is another event, the FinTelect and Asian Bankers Association, ABA, they are going to arrange 5-day-long virtual conference from 20th to 24th of this month. And there are a specific session for this correspondent banking that will be held on 23rd of July at 2 p.m. Dhaka time. So I am inviting all of you to join with this session where our Honorable ex-Deputy Governor, Mr. Razi Hassan sir, will inaugurate the event, the summit, as he is the co-chair for APG, Asia Pacific Group on Money Laundering. So I'd like to thanks again to all of you, especially to the moderators. Thank you very much.